What's going on, peeps? Welcome back to the channel. Today we got a short clip out there comparing esports to sports, something I believe Nadeshot and others have talked about before, and it's a rightful comparison because everyone in esports at first was trying to be a sports team, and I think we finally realized here in 2024 we can't be sports teams. All right, there is plenty of audience, not a lot of heavy-hitting, money-paying audience out there, but there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of viewers for a lot of esports out there. But we're not sports, and we might not ever be. So here is Nadeshot very briefly on stream comparing esports rosters and building them to that of sports teams.
You can actually, with the budget you have, win, and so you rebuild over time. But it's easier to deal with that in professional sports because you get a first number one draft pick in the offseason. So rebuilding actually makes a lot more sense. But through the lens of esports, 1 year feels like a decade, especially if you're a fan of a team and you don't think they have a shot at winning. So I know it's tough, but I actually think it's pretty fucking awesome to be the underdog and have these young kids trying to win for us on stage. You know, we got to win a world championship. We proved that we could win. And now we're just trying to take our time and put the right pieces together slowly but surely. And I know that's tough to stomach, but I promise you, man, we're working hard to get these guys, helping them find some success. The League of Legends team that's rocking these incredible jerseys on stage for these last few weeks, they are looking dangerous, bro. They're probably the most exciting team that we've had so far, just in terms of play style, man. These guys don't have any quit, and they're proactive. They're always trying to make a play happen, and it's been fun for me to watch, man. It really has, dude. I've been keeping up, bro. I tried to remove myself as much, like separation of church and state. Like when you start a business, this company is like permeates through every decision and thought that I have in my head, whether it's me waking up in the morning or going to bed at night. Like I'm always thinking about 100 Thieves, and it was tough when that pressure just became too much in the last few years.
And this is very interesting because the point he brings up right there is one thing to keep a level playing field is the fact that the worst teams, let's say for instance in the NFL or other leagues out there, you get a first round pick or you get the first overall pick the following season to try and balance things out a little bit. Something that esports does not have. Further alluding to the fact that a year in esports feels like 10 years in sports because you go match to match in esports, and if you are clearly not as good as your opponents, the season really drags on in esports, and I don't know if it's a repetitive thing, if it's a map by map. I know it's kind of tough to compare an NFL, 16-game season, whatever playoffs and those games end up being, to like Valorant versus like CS versus Smite versus Halo. You always play a different number of matches, but he does have a point because we are all so attached to esports. Like an LCS season for League of Legends can really drag on if you start out 0-10 or 2-8 compared to the NFL, where I feel like if a team starts out 5-7, they still have diehard fans rooting for them because they're so deeply rooted in their team. Like they grew up in that city, or their parents were, or their dad or their uncle was a fan of that team, and they will ride or die for that team no matter who plays for them. They're more so like a fan of the brand, not necessarily always the players. They're just a more of a fan if you get a really good player, you know? And I've always kind of tried to understand that balance between sports and esports, and it's hard to talk about the topic without going on a super tangent, you know? Because I feel like the biggest thing that esports does deal with is turnover. When you lose a couple players on an NFL lineup, it's okay because you got 22 guys on both sides of the ball in total, and it's like, you know, you can attach to several of them and maybe they'll lose a few, but they'll keep their main guys if they're doing what they do best. They try their best and they have the financial backing to keep a good amount of their big names and big players. In esports, when you lose one person in Rocket League, that's 33% of your team. When you lose two guys in CS, that's 40% of your lineup. When you lose two guys in Call of Duty, that's half your team just gone. And most oftentimes, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's really rare to see players spend more than a couple years underneath the same hood in esports, whereas with sports, when you set up these franchises and legacies with financial backing, usually you try and attach yourself to these star players for a long period of time. That's the end goal at least, right? And it feels like esports has not found that yet. Like most teams I have cheered for, that player has went from team to team to team to team to retire. And then I'm like, I don't know what team I can even attach to. And maybe that's just me, but I have a feeling some of you guys might agree with me. That's been my biggest gripe with esports so far, is my favorite players can't stay in the same place. And I feel like that's why it's so much easier to attach to streamers, because my favorite streamer is going to play different games all week long. My favorite player might not have a job tomorrow. Is like, oh, we're so screwed. So if Nadeshot and 100 Thieves have the plan to make these new rosters, he's also basing this out of a conversation where for Call of Duty and for League of Legends, they have had a bunch of younger players, and these kind of a few unknown names come up to build these teams for them, and they're more affordable for sure. So if their long-term vision is to keep these players for longer, I agree with this strategy. But for an organization to find that set of 3, 4, 5 players to do that, it's also very difficult because esports is very accessible and very competitive. You know, it's like, we could talk about this for hours. What do you guys think? Till next time, drink up for me. All right. We'll catch you back here sometime soon. Take care.